the female version of leather optional, plenty of legroom, which was this bride, this groom.
You know, what's the problem with a Land Rover when you don't see oil underneath it? You know, it means it's empty, right? Why don't the English make computers? Because they can't make them leak.
Plenty of headroom. On the second ad for you, which was history, right? That's why we're here today. You called me because, hey, people are still to this day bringing it up. Somebody had I think I saw your podcast. You know, they had a baby because of the ad with the leather pants.
That's right.
Jeff Sterns, connected through cars. If they're bigwigs, we'll have them on the show. And yes, we'll talk about cars and everything else. Here he is now, Jeff Sterns.
My brother, Micheal, was working for you.
Micheal had entertained working for me for a short period of time, and I think basically sat in on the office and got to hear what we did working with car dealers around the country. And I think made a couple of visits in some outside of you, his brother, and quickly, immediately teed somebody else up and kind of like a shuck and jive move. Was like, hey, listen, I don't think I'm going to take the job. However, I got somebody perfect for you. And that was his way of kind of handing off, you know, the position to somebody else once he realized, that we were in this crazy car dealer world. I don't think that was really his choice, but Micheal did introduce me to you. That's how I met you. And ultimately you were his first customer. We did some targeted direct mail, which was one of our core competencies at the time at the agency. That led into our great relationship and coming to see you in person and learning about what your goals were and what your challenges were and what you needed to do to basically shake the mansion up and to get a new breed of customer in there. And that's what you charged me with. I left that. I'll never forget coming into the office and we were, the mail's great and it worked and it's always going to work and we're always going to get, that 2.5%, 3% response. We're going to sell a handful of cars from it. It was like, but that's not going to solve the problem. And you left me with, you sent me out the door saying, hey, figure that out and I'll be interested in doing something, but I don't need any more mail, right? That's basically what it came down to. And I need something more than that. And I went to as we say, the lab.
Well, and Micheal oversold. Well, I don't want to say Micheal oversold me on you, but when my brother says, I'm working with this guy, Sean, look, I'd been in the car business. I was already a veteran. I was the GSM at a Cadillac dealership. At this point, I'd seen direct mail. Everyone watching this, whether they're in the car business or not, has gotten their mailbox stuffed with direct mail. But what I really wanted was something different. And I told Micheal, and he goes, listen, I really think this guy Sean can do it. And I let you know, Sean, I can't have everyone whispering in this mansion and thinking that it's not cool to come into. I want it to feel like a casino atmosphere when people coming in. I want it to feel like people winning. I want it to be inviting, and I want it to be inviting to everyone besides a DeVille buyer. Not that we weren't grateful to have the DeVille business, but yeah, we already had the DeVille buyer playing bingo on the church bingo machine out in the service drive. And God bless those customers. We needed them. They were our bread and butter.
You had the vision. We have to grow with a new audience, right? If the older audience is, in essence, dying off, right? That's the reality of it. They're getting older. As we used to say in the media business, right? The radio business, they're falling off the dial at, a certain age. They stop listening to right? It's just the reality. Consumers age out and we have an LTV of a customer, but the reality is we have to pick up these new customers and we have to find the new audience, right? And that's something that you had the vision to see is how do we get them in here? We have a product line that may not necessarily be so appealing. The Katera and the Caddy, that Zig campaign was just bubbling. It was just starting to come out. It was not really resonating the way it was supposed to. It wasn't getting people into the store because it was kind of like a contrived way to be cool. And it wasn't resonating with Gen Xers at all. It was just very GM, right? Madison Avenue, just very vanilla. And it just didn't connect with the audience. And maybe because the influencer thing had not really been born yet, but we were doing street marketing and we had our finger on the pulse of the markets and we were out there in real street marketing teams, applying this kind of influencer marketing back in the 90s. And we were using it from a street marketing standpoint. And it was doing intercepts and using influencers in marketplaces that would influence based on usage of a product. We were doing that in the Reno market with the Winkle Group. And that was something that we were really big on. And we thought that we thought that we could carry it over for you when we had the orders. And I'll let you take over from there.
So, you came up with this idea, and I got to tell you, like, what was going on internally. I did a lot of this when I was there. Is how am I going to get this past my owner? And let's just do it anyway, because I don't think my owner's going to go for this. So you came in, a little bit like Darren from Bewitched with the storyboard of, here's the idea, and it really blew us away. So as these slides are on the screen, as these images are on the screen, let's talk about the first one. What's the first one you want to talk about?
Well, I think the first one is really, the first set was before the entry of the male leather optional. So you got to start with really how it started. And the storyboards were, and we'll start with number one, the female version of leather optional, and the first ad, this individual this influencer was, in the hair industry, was very just well known in the marketplace, and an influencer. Her family is in essence influencers on the fishing and the construction side. So these were just very well known young people in the marketplace. But this particular individual, Naki, who is still today an incredible influencer in Brooklyn and in the hair industry, agreed to do this shoot. And she immediately loved the idea of the leather optional concept. And of course, it tied into the vehicle. So it was a perfect way to kind of make this car that just wasn't cool, right? They say you can put lipstick on a pig, but it's still not going to, well, it might still be cute. But there was nothing we could do with the Catera to make it even cute. It just wasn't. Even a catchy little tagline like they had, which we were just knew was a big turnoff. So that was one of the first and most important parts of the ad, was that leather optional, and to be able to kind of just grab people's attention with something that would be somewhat shocking. And remember also in Tampa Bay, there was a very big culture of alternative lifestyle. And to this day, there is still conventions here for, what would be more apt to using, leather and chains and whips and dips and ships and all that fun stuff. So this stuff was kind of relevant for Tampa Bay too. It wasn't just like shocking because a girl had leather and it was leather optional and it grabbed your attention like a good ad should do, but it allowed us to have a series of these that made it fun and made it funny, right? Which was also then the second part of that storyboard, which none of these were obviously shot. They were just drawn out on a storyboard, and was the plenty of legroom, which was this bride, this groom. She's pulling him into, which at the time was the Land Rover, which did not really have, right? You can explain more as the GSM, Jeff, of Land Rover at the time. The Challenger's Land Rover.
At the time. And I mean, and Land Rovers still have their reputation for little sniggles, being an English car. How do what's the problem with a Land Rover when you don't see oil underneath it? It means it's empty, right? Why don't the English make computers? Because they can't make them leak.
Did you guys actually have like the best jokes about Land Rovers at the time?
Well, I mean, I later got into Rolls and Bentley, so it was definitely always an English car thing. My Bentley rep, God rest his soul, Rodney, just loved him to death, Scottish guy, says, Sir, it's not a leak. It's a location of lubrication problem. Straight face to a customer. The Land Rover is English, so it was quirky. There were people that loved it because of what it was. It was unbelievable off-road, like nothing like it. And if you recall, we had a couple of acre Land Rover test track out back to get it stuck and winch it out and whatever degree breakover angle and side angles and whatever, and with the center of gravity, et cetera, et cetera. But it did not have plenty of legroom.
All the things you'll do in Tampa Bay, by the way, with a Land Rover.
Everything that the hipsters and, let's see, I got to be politically correct because I'm always politically correct on these podcasts. But let's say, who would like to drive those? Let's see. They might like Disney, like Miatas. They like Minnie. And they like their Land Rovers. And I can tell you that I did increase the gay. You did increase the gay when my ad came up. Finally, we got a little bit in there, and it was funny because a couple of times, we're not onto my ad yet, but when we got to the one that I was in, just a few times someone would be like, well, I'm trying to close them on payment or something, would be like, was that you in that ad? And it was fun. I mean, it was definitely fun. I want to wait until we get to that ad, but we're now at the leather optional. I'm sorry, we're now at the plenty of legroom, and you're asking, describe that car. It had no freaking legroom. It was a giant exterior with a tall roof, and I guess it was an engineering problem because inside it had nothing.
But we wanted to appeal to that SUV, that crossover, right? It wasn't about riding the rocks. It wasn't about, you got a winch that can pull, right? This was about driving around Tampa Bay and go, right? This was about appealing to the soccer moms of that time and not only the soccer moms, but ultimately the hipsters and everybody else in the Tampa Bay area that were more interested in those SUVs and what was burgeoning as that rich SUV market.
Well, Sean, I mean, I got to interrupt because there was a little bit of an off-road culture in Tampa Bay. So right after I joined as general sales manager of that dealership, I think it was the 4th of July or it was certainly around then, I ended up visiting a buddy of mine, Chris Warren, at his new house, and he had a retention pond behind the house. And I've been to the Land Rover driving school, and we got the rock out front that we got it cocked sideways on. So I know the thing's invincible. He goes, is this your new demo? I'm like, nah, I just wanted to drive it over because you got this retention pond out back. I'm going to show you something. So I go drive it around the side of his house and around his bird cage pool and everything around the back, get it all in between the trees and whatever, fold the mirrors in so I get it there, and I drive it down super sharp angle the side of this retention pond and touch the front bumper to the water and throw it in reverse, and I get out of it. And everyone's like, wow, that looked a little scary. I'm like, puh, that's nothing. Watch this. Take it down a little further, halfway up the grill. Back it up. The thing, like a bulldog. Backing up, goes right out. Everyone's like, oh, my God. I says, it didn't really feel like a lot of effort. Let me try it again. I go down a little deeper and drink water. Motor drinks water. We end up getting 2 tow trucks where they both had to hook their cables up to it in the backyard to pull the thing out. And I'm like my second week on the job, and I ingested water into an engine, like mothballed an engine in a brand new. So there was a big off-road underground going on.
But the big question is why 3 times? The 2 times wasn't enough?
Because I got out the first. I had to go a little further down. I'm Jeff Sterns. My drug of choice is more.
Yeah, just give me another one. They were all in on the first one, right? You could have sold 4 from the first one.
Right, I lost them all on the third. I talked way past the close. I know. But your ad campaign was genius because, right now everyone has an SUV or a crossover. I mean, almost no passenger cars sell anymore compared to SUVs and crossovers. But at that time, an SUV was kind of novel. I mean, it was an Explorer. I mean, that was it. Just a few. Escalade wasn't out yet. I mean, there was nothing like that. And you were actually putting a little spotlight on that. And if I recall, the newspaper came out weekly and you ran 12 weeks. I think everything ran 3 times or something, right? Except the one bonus ad.
It did. And each week there was a new ad running. So it built it kept the story and the theme going. And then the third week, and yes, it did actually put a highlight on that. And we were looking to focus on the utility and the soccer mom and the hipster. And hey, this is a vehicle again, that we position with the plenty of legroom.
Well, and you have plenty of legroom. And my owner, we didn't tell anything about it. And once he came down and was like, oh my God, what are you doing? And I'm like, well, listen, we're locked into the agreement, the contract. We can't stop it now. And he's like, but do you know what leg means?
We sure do. I mean, it is a bride and a groom. As we could see, we made sure it was politically correct. It's a bride and a groom. They're so excited about each other. They can't wait to get into their brand new Land Rover, by the way, from Dimmitt. I mean, how cool is that? To be able to consummate the marriage. I mean, how fantastic, and what a great...
It's not about political correctness, Sean. It was moral.
Yes, I get it. That's all of a sudden something we shouldn't be doing. But the good news is that ad with the plenty of legroom, I think also related to a different audience in addition to the leather optional, right? Starting with the week one, that was kind of grabbed your attention and really just, shook the market up, which it did, and created a lot of talk value leading up to that more softer, that now is the more normalized family, right? The late 90s family, young family, just getting married. And by the way, two very important influencers, but one mainly Billy Wells, who's in that. He's toured with the Goo Goo Dolls, was in a band called Gun Burner, signed to Columbia Records. And he was an influencer and very well known, even to this day, produced by Matt Wallace, who did Faith No More and Maroon 5, and just a really incredible artist and influencer in the Tampa Bay area, especially at that time. So Billy, and then Rachel, who was a designer from Parsons, who was in that ad and also in the scene as you call it.
And were you in the music business then, Sean, when he signed to Columbia?
I did. So when I was running what became Big Gross, which was a traditional agency, and we flipped it to take advantage of the .com in 98, right when we were doing this, we were kind of transitioning the company into a .com, but it was a traditional agency focused on direct response originally. And one of my side ventures was, I was a founder and an investor in a record label. That record label was called Stainless, and it ran alongside of the agency. That was kind of like the hobby. That's what I did for fun. I didn't play golf and I didn't, play cards. That was what I was into, right? And that was a really incredible, expose in marketing and what we were able to accomplish with MP3.com, the early days of MP3. That's a whole different, so we'll do a different show on that. But Billy was a part of that, and we were literally 90,000 downloads of one of his tracks at that time. Put us in Rolling Stone magazine article, Business 2.0. It was a really great time. So he was in that ad, and I picked him purposely. He was tall and good looking, and we made him look a little bit less rock star, as you could tell, and just look like the good looking guy next door, the South Tampa guy making that six figures, that wants to flex and show off that very cool, urban assault vehicle with his beautiful wife. So sex and rock and roll, right? So far is what we're accomplishing, and also the standards of society. So we're kind of touching on everybody there. So the third ad was using an influencer in the area who was really big. Her name was Roxana. So we got Billy Wells in ad 2, and Rachel Myers, and then Naki Karcher in the first one, and then the third ad was Roxana Escobalas, and she worked at Red Star, which was a very popular art infused nightclub and acid tub jazz, and she was an influencer in the art culture, and was a writer, and a really great writer for the Creative Loafing Weekly Planet. A really great writer, and wrote great stories, and you still a writer to this day. But Roxanne, who had this incredible hair, as you can see, and there was a no-brainer. It was like, look, plenty of headroom, and that was the perfect thing to be able to use Roxanne for, with that funky, 90s, that whole dance music scene, and that just beautiful big Mediterranean hair, it was perfect, and it just all came together, and from the storyboard to what it was like when it got shot, and I think that ad was able to relate to, again, females, and be able to really talk to young females in a different way about vehicles that they normally may have never looked at.
Sean, but you got to understand, an audience, you got to understand. We're in this Cadillac dealership that up till now has really just been Cadillac, and the traditional Cadillac customer from their, kind of high-end retirement communities and or been buying there for 40 years. And I was really skeptical when my brother introduced me to you, because I'm like, what are we going to get out of this little weekend rag that you look at to see which restaurant to go to, or who's got what band where, or in the very, very back, the whatever seeking whatever ads, in the back. And I'm like, are we even going to get anything? But the beautiful thing about these ads, I mean, look, I like anything fun, and I like a little shtick, and I like to be edgy, no doubt. So when you were showing them to me, I'm like, my God, what talent. But I was thinking, are we going to get anywhere in this rag? And when these were coming out, I couldn't go anywhere without someone bringing one up, because there were plenty of headroom. I mean, it was so edgy for a Cadillac dealership in Clearwater, Florida. Not a Cadillac dealership in LA, a Cadillac dealership in Clearwater, Florida. Not San Fran, not New York.
So you got to remember, though, Jeff, one of the things, it wasn't just what you wanted to accomplish in the vision that, hey, I want to go after a different audience. We got to find a new way to sell these new cars to younger people, build a new audience, and that next 10, 20 years of customers. So one of the things why you guys, if you remember, in that storyboard, there was also the data, the demographics and the readership of what was happening in those magazines. They were really substantial, those weeklies. And it was tapping a whole nother audience that you guys were missing. And it was audited, and it was documented of what those numbers were. And that's why you guys were like, this does make sense, because on paper, the numbers were stronger than even, the Times when it came to, right? Or at the time, the Tribune as well. You had both of them. You had two competitive Bay papers.
If you're not local, and Sean, remember, we're not just talking to local people on this show. Not only are we all over the United States, but our number 2 download is not even Canada. I think it's France. So the St. Petersburg Times or the Tampa Tribune.
That's it. Those were your two.
So those are newspapers, which the young people are like, how old are these freaking guys' newspaper?
Yeah. And then they weren't reading the newspaper, just like what happened. That's a trend that did not stop, right? And they were looking for alternative sources of content, and the internet was there, now giving them that, right? It's 99. So think about how much content people had access to now. And really, the world had changed greatly by the time that we did these ads, as far as that younger Gen X that was basically consuming content differently. They adopted technology a lot faster than their generation before them, their parents, right? And they were right there at this major boom of the internet. So the numbers in those magazines or those weeklies were really strong. I can't remember exactly, and I hope I'm not wrong, but I actually can remember, I think somewhere in the tune of, I think the average income might have been $60,000+ and of the average reader of it at the time. And it was just, the numbers were really solid. And then when you broke down what the psychographics were of that readership in those demos, it was really just like, yeah, these are those people that we want. And by the way, I mean, they were thick. I mean, they were loaded in advertising and loaded in all of the best local, not so good, but the majority and the big box stores and different types of national retailers were starting to put money in those papers at the time, if you remember. So it also gave you guys a little more confidence there too, because you were the only dealer that had cracked the code, especially from a highline dealer standpoint. You were the only dealer that cracked the code and did anything like that before. So that was a first. But the reality of it is that, other Fortune 1000 brands had started to sniff around and advertise in the weeklies at that point. And then that series, which was very successful and was launched, then spawned the 4th ad, which was like an add-on, which was great because by this time, I believe, the excitement, the enthusiasm, again, I'll share some of the, we'll call it small-minded pushback and ignorance that you encountered, getting hit with bird shit and stones in essence, for something that really did accomplish what it was supposed to. But before we got there, you had, I believe, if I recall, because one of the things that was great too is that the shoot we did really was a great shoot. We did Todd Bates, who was the creative director, or at the time, I think the head photographer, and then became the creative director of the Creative Loafing. I think to this day still involved. You could follow him on Instagram. Todd's an incredible artist as well, works with major companies and has produced just incredible photography and digital art. Just great creative direction. And he was the guy who shot the first set of ads. And we had to bring in a different photographer. The second set, he wasn't available. I think Dave Monroe, who you went to his studio, if you remember, in Clearwater, actually. But when we brought you in to do that shoot, you had now kind of felt the enthusiasm of the market. And like you said, everywhere you went, you were hearing things and people were talking to you about it. And if people are talking about something, right? The old saying, if they're talking about it, right? As long as they spell your name right, good or bad, they're talking about it. And good or bad, they were talking about it. And that's what was happening. And you saw that. And I'm, from a standpoint, I'll let you talk about what you saw in the store and what that translated to. But we wanted to do another ad, and that next ad was going to be you. So I don't know if you want to talk about that and how that all came together.
Well, and I think, this is going back, but I think it was your idea. Why don't we put you in one?
Well, actually, you told me that. I don't know the leather chaps, right? The leather. Where did those come from?
I think they were in the studio when I walked in.
They were part of the props. Okay, I wasn't sure if you had told me that you had a pair of leather pants.
No.
I told you that I had a pair of leather pants.
No. So, outside of my new modeling career, I was very, very conservative. Wife, kid on the way, white picket fence, 2 Labrador retrievers, Republican.
And fitness. And you guys were very fit.
Right.
Yes. And you guys, fitness was a very important thing. I know that it happened very organically. It happened naturally in a conversation and it happened very quickly. And then we did the shoot.
I think you said, do you want to do one and we'll replace the leather optional girl with the whip with you? And of course, I'm in on any practical joke or shtick, no matter what. And I told nobody in the dealership. I told nobody. I told no bosses. I told no coworkers. And you just told me where to be in Clearwater. And I show up, and all of a sudden I feel like a movie star because there's a little makeup, and you're putting these clothes on me, this leather vest. And I remember you put all these clips to make it fit down the back. Right?
Yeah.
Clothespins or whatever they were. One
of the things too that was going on, and again, we'd have to go back and look through the watermark at the time, but I know that we were going to tap, the LGBT community at the time. And the reality of it is that was one of the main drivers, was that we wanted to tap into the market, and we were going to use you in that effort. We were going to run the campaign now, your campaign specifically in watermark. And there was also something timely, like some big event or something. I'm not sure if it was Pride or what was going on, Jeff, but we were tying into some type of event culturally that was taking place, that watermark, and we ended up just moving forward with that. And so I know this.
What does watermark mean?
Which it's still out today. Watermark is a LGBT weekly or a monthly publication at the time.
What's LBGT?
Lesbian, gay, trans.
Well, excuse me. I live in Palm Harbor. I'm not in St. Pete.
LGBT, yeah. Sorry. Yeah, didn't mean to mess that up. But LGBT. I don't even know if they had all of that at the time. It might have just been LGB. I swear. I'm not being funny. I'm pretty confident that in 1999, I think it was LGB.
I think the only trans that anyone knew about was in Crying Game at that time.
Yeah, well, the reality is that it was a great opportunity to introduce. And if you remember, this is very important. So if you remember, we were also working with somebody who was a very big influencer and a big voice in the gay community. His name is Sterling Powell, and he's still here today. Sterling was an incredible artist. He worked with the city. He still works with the city to this day, curating all their art and everything. But Sterling, if you remember, we were doing, and Sterling was really like a caricature. Sterling Powell was a caricature a caricature of himself. And it was this, this incredible abstract blend of Dolly meets, this, John Waters meets, right? It was meets Jeff, who is the character behind Sterling, because he's a wonderful guy. But if you remember, Sterling remembers this. If he watches this, we'll make sure we send it to him. Sterling, actually, you were going to go forward with it. We were going to make Sterling basically a represent. We were going to give him a demo potentially, and he was in the
store for some reason. Now that you mention that, yeah,
he was going to be like an ambassador, and basically, it wasn't a good fit for you guys. I think you guys got a little bit of cold feet. You probably got a hard no upstairs, but because he's very flamboyant, but he was an incredible advocate for AIDS, and he was one of the first people in Florida on the cocktail that saved his life, and was an incredible mouthpiece and advocate for AIDS and gay men inflicted with AIDS that were suffering, and to this day he's an incredible testament. So what was so magical about this campaign was really the people. It was the people that are in these ads that were real influencers in this market area that allowed you to tap a market and connect with an audience. By the way, many audiences, not just one, many audiences across not just the Bay, but a region, because that thing covered a region in essence, right? Even though that magazine, it covered a region. And that's what made it so special. The photographers, Todd Bates, Dave Monroe on the second ad for you, which was history, right? That's why we're here today. You called me because, hey, people are still to this day bringing it up. Somebody I think I saw your podcast. They had a baby because of the ad with the leather pants.
That's right.
I mean, it's flattering to me. It's humbling. It's what the magic of that campaign was. It was everything. The photographers. I already remember the girls who did the makeup. I think it was Star Makeup was the name of it, or something along that. I can remember all this because the characters were so rich and colorful, off camera as well as on camera. And I have actual backstage shots, Jeff, I'll send over to you. I still have to this day of backstage, like with all of us, the models and everything, shot with the photographer. I don't know who took the picture. It might have been you. Somebody took the picture, but still to this day have that picture. And it was really, that was the power and the magic in that campaign. It was the people. It was who they were and what they were when the camera wasn't on them, when they were influencing and just being themselves and being creative types and influencers in a market area. And when all that came together, coupled with, what was happening in society, in media, in digital, and advertising, and the early stages of influencers, which was really this, not just us, but there was a lot of what we see today was starting to really bubble under at the time. So really, really exciting and really energizing to have this conversation. That is for sure.
That ad is 99. So here we are 22-ish years later, and it still comes up.
This has been Jeff Sterns, Connected Through Cars.